Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Uh, this is the explanation for the lecture. I think 18, right? Lecture number 18. To the restrictive lung disease. Restrictive lung diseases. So particularly we are going to see in detail about three diseases, and in that two diseases in detail. The three diseases we are going to talk about: idiopathic, pulmonary fibrosis, and pneumoconiosis, and like sarcoidosis. Okay, so as I said, it is all these diseases are restrictive lung diseases, which means, so we have a alveoli, and you all know the alveoli is surrounded by alveoli is surrounded by capillaries. Okay, and you all know this alveoli comes from the bronchioles. You all know the bronchioles are lined by ciliated epithelium, then they become flat, type 1 and type 2 epithelium. Okay. This is a type 1 and type 2 epithelium, and type 2 epithelium secretes surfactant, and you all know the function of surfactant, right? Okay, one of the function of surfactant is, so this is alveoli, and this alveoli has some water droplets. Okay, so remember, H2O attracts the another H2O molecule very strongly. Okay, they pull the another H2O molecule strongly. So now we have H2O here and H2O here, right? So if they both pull strongly, then the alveoli will collapse. Then the alveoli will collapse. So if they are left like this, what happens? The alveoli will become like this, because the water molecules pull them each other. Okay, to avoid that, we have a special substance called surfactant. Okay, so surfactant is otherwise called dipalmitoyl phosphatidyl choline. They have hydrophilic and hydrophobic end. This is hydrophilic and hydrophobic end. So what happens? The hydrophilic attach with the water, and they have hydrophobic end towards the lumen of the alveoli. Okay, so the alveoli will not come closer. The alveoli will not come closer. In that way, they increase the surface area. In that way, they increase the surface area. If the child is having less surfactant or defective surfactant, what happens? They will become collapsed. They will become collapsed. Then the alveolar epithelium goes for damage. The alveolar epithelium goes for damage. That creates inflammation, and then they produce acute lung injury. Then they produce acute lung injury. So this happens in the children. So we call it as a acute respiratory distress syndrome in children. So that's what Professor Sali told. It is a infant respiratory distress syndrome. Both are same. Understand? So as a pathologist, we call adult acute respiratory distress syndrome child or infant respiratory distress syndrome. Okay, so this happens especially in the, it's a congenital disorder, this happens within the 1 year of the child, within 1 year of the child, understand. So this is about surfactant. Now let's see about restrictive diseases, and you all know this is endothelium, right? This is endothelium. This is about endothelial cells. Now these endothelial cells are have nucleus. Of course all cells have nucleus, but there is some gap here, right? This gap is called endothelial gap, normally seen in the capillaries. The area between this alveoli and endothelium, this area is called, this area is called interstitium. This area is called interstitium, right? See, and this interstitium, even in microscope we don't see. Okay, when we see interstitium, then we are dealing with pathology, because we call that as interstitial widening. Interstitial widening. This interstitial widening is seen, then we will be thinking of pathology. What we do is we see interstitium carefully. Okay, what we see in the interstitium, according to that we name it. Okay, so for example, I see lot of fibrosis. Okay, in fibrosis, it looks like a pink color band in hematoxylin and eosin. It looks like a pink color band in hematoxylin and eosin. I see now lot of fibrosis. Okay, fibrosis means what? More collagen, right? Increased collagen. So what happens when there is lot of fibrosis? Do you think alveoli can stretch? Alveoli can expand? They cannot expand. So all the interstitial disease we call restrictive lung disease, restrictive pulmonary disease. Okay, we call restrictive disease due to internal pathology, that is some pathology is happening within the lung. Okay, if I say it is interstitial disease, which means restrictive disease due to some problem in the interstitium, understand, because restrictive disease can be external. If the person muscle is weak, they cannot increase the chest. Okay, so that is external disease causing restriction, you understand. So some person is having some problem in the diaphragm. Okay, so that is extrinsic disease causing restriction, understand. But in this lecture we are going to discuss about internal problem, that is interstitial problem affecting the lung expansion, putting restriction to the lung, putting restriction to the lung. Actually I am putting the same concept in different phrases, nothing more than that. Okay, so if any problem happen to the interstitium, the alveoli cannot expand, the stretching capacity of the alveoli is lost. So the air entering, because the volume is reduced, the volume is reduced, the air entering to the lung is reduced. You can understand why volume is, if volume is reduced, why the air entry is reduced? Anyone can tell? This is one reason. Actually you have to, because the physiology class is running, right? So I want to compare you guys with the physiology class. So so there are three types of pressure. What are they? Intrapleural pressure. First let's go from outside, or see, you should take one path, you should not start from in the middle. So whether you have to go from inside to outside or outside to inside. Okay, we go from outside to inside. There is a intrathoracic pressure, then there is a intrapleural pressure, then there is a intrapulmonary pressure, intrapulmonary pressure, intraalveolar pressure, understand. So all these three pressure should be negative, all these three pressure should be negative to air to enter, air to enter. Okay, if why they are in negative? Okay, little bit physiology class I will take. This is trachea, bronchi, and this is the lung side, and the bronchi divides into bronchioles, they divide into bronchioles, right, and they form alveoli. Okay, so just this is the alveoli. Okay, then it's understood that they also have bronchioles, right? So normally we divide them into upper alveoli, not lobes. Okay, upper or apex alveoli, medial alveoli, basal alveoli. Okay, so there is a physiology like more air comes to the basal part. Okay, I don't want to go into those physiologies. This all you should know. So then we have pleura, right? The pleura, one layer is very close to the lung parenchyma, that is called visceral pleura. So one kind of pleura is attached to the thoracic cavity, right? That is called parietal pleura. Okay. After that we have, consider this is the sternum. Okay, and we have ribs attached to the sternum, 7 pairs of ribs from either side, they attach to the sternum, then rest of the ribs float. Okay, so now I am going to talk about 3 pressure. One is intrathoracic pressure, intrathoracic pressure. Other one is pleural pressure. Other one is intrapulmonary pressure. Pulmonary pressure. Okay, this all should be negative because during the process of inspiration, the external intercostal muscle moves the rib cage upward and outward, and diaphragm comes down. So that will increase the space in the thorax. So when that increases the space in the thorax, even the lung space is increased. Understand? So when the space is increased, volume is increased, that will reduce the pressure. So the outside pressure is 760 mm of mercury. So inside they will be reduced less than 760, around 759. So automatically from higher pressure to the lower pressure the air enters. Okay, so the pressure should be negative, all the pressure should be negative, the air should go inside. Okay, then the stretching happens, then the recoiling happens. When the recoiling happens, the pressure increases because volume decreases. Volume decreases, the pressure increases. Okay, so what happens, they go to 761 and the air goes out, you understand? This is a process, simple way of telling the process of ventilation. This is a very simple way of telling the process called ventilation. Understand? So why I am telling this is affected. What happens when they cannot able to expand due to something happening in the fibrosis? The volume cannot be expanded. So that's why in pulmonary function test, forced vital capacity is reduced. In other words, total lung capacity is reduced. Understand? So for this one I am putting that basics. Understand? So when the lung cannot expand, when the alveoli cannot expand, automatically the volume cannot be expand, so the pressure cannot drop, so the air cannot enter. Understand? The ventilation is affected. The process of ventilation is affected. So that's why you can see in the pulmonary function test these values. Okay, their values will be reduced. Okay, now what as a pathologist I see, what I see in the interstitium that matters to me. If I see fibrosis, what happened? If I see fibrosis, Okay, if I see lot of fibrosis, then I say if I know the cause of fibrosis. Okay, now I'm going to confuse you guys more. If I know the person is having obstructive lung disease like chronic bronchitis or emphysema and he started having fibrosis, then I say COPD went for interstitial fibrosis and it is a COPD going to restrictive lung disease. COPD transforming, because end stage COPDs will end up with fibrosis and that is called end stage lung disease. That is called end stage lung diseases. Okay, so if I know the patient is already been diagnosed of COPD, then I see fibrosis, I will not worry of things because I know the process. I know the process. COPD is taking him to end stage. Okay, now this person is normal adult patient and I saw fibrosis in the interstitium, but I cannot identify any cause. Then I call this condition as idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. You understand? So idiopathic means what? I don't know there is no any identifiable cause. So it is a idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, very rare disorder, but I am telling you because it is very easy to remember. Okay, the problem is they have increased transforming growth factor beta. There are many pathogenesis, many hypotheses. They have, one of the reason is they have increased transforming growth factor beta. So this will keep on stimulate the connective tissue cells like fibroblasts and they produce more collagen. So collagen is increased, that end up with fibrosis. Understand? Okay, now let us come to our interstitium. Now this interstitium is having some fibrosis as well as, actually now interstitium is widened. So we are seeing the interstitium, what is there in the interstitium. You understand? Now the interstitium is widened and just I am erasing the fibrosis. Right? So now what we are going to see, let's see what is in the interstitium. In this case, this person is working in a coal mining industry. Coal industry, all know. Okay, so he is working in a coal industry and in the coal industry person, they have macrophage, right? The coal keep on coming to the lung more. Okay, so first initially the macrophage takes all the coal inside. The macrophage takes all the coal inside. The person lung will becomes black. The person lung will slowly becomes black and the coal goes to the interstitium also. The coal goes to the interstitium also and now the macrophage in the interstitium also takes the coal. Macrophage in the interstitium also takes the coal and this macrophage gets stimulated. Okay, they go for chronic inflammation, right? And they produce our old story, fibrosis. They produce fibrosis. Now it is a black lung and the lung is loaded with carbon loaded macrophages, coal loaded macrophages, and there is fibrosis in the interstitium and you know that the person is working in a industry. Okay, so this condition is called pneumoconiosis. This condition is called pneumoconiosis. If it is due to coal, this condition is called anthracosis. This condition is called anthracosis and if it start having fibrosis, then it is called anthracosis producing fibrosis. Otherwise this disease progressed to fibrosis. We call progressive massive fibrosis. We call progressive massive fibrosis. Okay, what happens is in this disease one other thing happens. This macrophage go into the blood and they go to the joints. These macrophages go to the joints and they produce joint disease. So when they have lung disease with joint disease, then it is called Kaplan syndrome. Then this condition is called, if this go to the circulation, okay, fully loaded with coal, and then it goes to the, then they go to the joint. This condition is called Kaplan syndrome. Understand? This condition is called Kaplan syndrome. Okay. So this is happens in coal industry workers, and the same thing happens in another industry workers called silica. Okay, again mining industry. So this one is, we saw coal industry, right? Another one is silica. It's a sand like deposits, okay, comes as a dust. Okay, so we have two forms of silica. One is crystalline form, other one is amorphous form. So crystalline form is pathologic. Crystalline form is, you understand, pathologic. That is the one disease, produce the disease, pathologic. Okay, so amorphous form is not pathologic. Okay, so when the crystalline form enters, the whole process happens. The same process happens, but here the substance is different. It is a crystalline form of silica. It is a crystalline form of silica. So next I am going to talk about a very dangerous substance. So I will draw a separate picture for it. It is called asbestos. Have you ever heard of this name? Asbestos. I think OS, huh? Asbestos. Okay. So now let's draw our lung of this patient. Right? And you all know this lung is covered by pleura. I am drawing only the parietal pleura. Okay, and this person has bronchioles. I am drawing one of his alveoli, okay, in each area. Understand? Please don't talk. Okay, this is his alveoli, and you all know this is surrounded by capillaries. Okay, this is surrounded by capillaries. Okay, now this person is working in a asbestos industry. Asbestos industry is like electrical wire industry. They all have used asbestos. So this asbestos, again there are two forms. Again there are two forms. One is amorphous, other one is crystalline. This crystalline form is dangerous. So if the crystalline form enters, they go to the lung, then it is taken by the alveoli, and they go for some chronic inflammation, and they also go to the pleura, and they produce pleural fibrotic nodules. Pleural fibrotic nodules. You understand? They produce pleural fibrotic nodules, and they also produce interstitial fibrosis. They also produce interstitial fibrosis type. So these pleural nodules are called pleural plaques. You girls are with me? Pleural plaques. And this is interstitial pulmonary fibrosis. You all understand? Pulmonary fibrosis. Okay, they don't stop only at only this level. They produce any serious form of cancer, very dangerous form of cancer from the pleura. This is called very aggressive cancer. The patient even they will not survive more than a year. This is called mesothelioma. Mesothelioma. Don't think it is benign because it is having oma. It is highly cancerous disease, and they also produce cancer of the lung. They also produce cancer of the lung, and they enter the blood, and they enter the digestive tract. They produce cancer of the stomach, and they also produce, they go to the small intestine, they come to the colon like this, and they produce cancer of the colon. So it is highly dangerous. So that's why if the asbestos worker people, they keep on check their asbestos level. There is a doctor called occupation medicine doctor. They will check the person's asbestos level. Remember, if the person is a smoker and he is a asbestos person, his lung is getting cancer is increased to 59 times. If he is alone a smoker, it is around 15 times. Okay, so it is 60 times increased if he is a smoker as well as working in a asbestos industries. Okay, so that's why the particle producing the effect, the industrial particle producing the effect, it depends upon the size of the particle. It depends upon the size of the particle and solubility nature of the particle. You understand? Solubility nature of the particle, and whether the person is having another kind of problem like smoking. Understand? These three factors very important, because if the particle size is very large, that produce fibrosis immediately. If the particle size is small, they produce acute lung injury. So what is the size of the particle determines it. The size is around 5 microns. Easy to remember like that. Around 5 microns they can enter the terminal bronchiole, which means they can enter the alveoli also. Understand? So this is very dangerous particle, because immediately they produce acute lung injury, then they go for fibrosis. If they are not causing acute lung injury, definitely they go for fibrosis. But generally larger particle will produce fibrosis. But sometimes even smaller particle, in medicine that's what I say, nothing is 100%. Okay, so if they don't cause acute lung injury, definitely they will cause fibrosis. If it is a silica, they will produce cancer. If it is asbestos, they produce pleural fibrosis as well as they produce cancer. Understand? So this is about the lung in occupational diseases. What is this? Capillary, alveoli. This is interstitium. Now this interstitium is having structures like this. Let's check. What do you girls think? Huh? Attendant? I forgot to bring in. Okay. So this is group of macrophages, and they are surrounded by epithelioid cells and Langerhans giant cells and lymphocytes, and they are circulating each other like this. Structures, we have lot of structures in the interstitium, and they have lot of giant cells, but there is no necrosis, there is no central necrosis. This is full of lymphocytes, and this is macrophage, and this is activated macrophage, epithelioid cells. So like that, these are the cells are seen. What do you girls think of it? It is a granuloma. So In the interstitium, you are seeing lot of granuloma. It is a granulomatous disease, and if this granuloma is not having caseating necrosis, it is called non-caseating granuloma, and you are checking for TB in this patient, and TB is negative in this patient, then you call it as sarcoidosis. Sarcoidosis. This is the disease name. Sarcoidosis. So this sarcoidosis is diagnosed on the basis of excluding the TB, on the basis of excluding the tuberculosis. You have to exclude the tuberculosis, you have to check all the way to check the tuberculosis, and you have to exclude it, then you can diagnose it as sarcoidosis. Because tuberculosis, we don't give steroids as a treatment. In sarcoidosis, we give steroid as a main treatment. And if you give tuberculosis patient steroid, they will die. But if you take sarcoidosis patient, if you give TB, they will not die. Okay, the disease may worse, but in the end, if the person is not progressing better, we think that is called therapeutic response. What we do, in some cases we cannot diagnose whether it is a sarcoid or TB. In that case, I give the treatment of TB and I see whether the person is improving, and if the person is not improving, then it is not a TB, then I will start the treatment of sarcoidosis. So most of the case, even nowadays, we do this, okay, to take the risk, because to favor the patient, understand. So we should not jump into the diagnosis of sarcoidosis immediately. It is a diagnosis by excluding the tuberculosis, understand. Anyone can say how the granuloma is formed? See, something is stimulating the macrophage. The macrophage releases what? Interleukin 12. Then interleukin 12 stimulates the. See, anyone, don't play chorus here. Okay, please, anyone, come bold and tell me what that is granuloma, mechanism of granuloma formation. Okay. First, macrophage is stimulated. Macrophage releases what? Anyone from this side? Macrophage releases what? Interleukin 12, mashallah. Then interleukin 12 stimulates what cell? Okay, now you have to know the name of the T lymphocyte. It is Th1 lymphocyte. In asthma, Th2 lymphocyte. Here, it is Th1 lymphocyte. Okay, this lymphocyte releases what? Interferon gamma. This interferon gamma does what? Okay. It brings more monocytes into the tissue, that will become macrophage. Then that will activate the macrophage, and then interferon gamma go to the macrophage to fuse the lysosome and the phagosome. Here there is no phagosome itself, because we don't know what causes the stimulation. Okay, so that's why they don't create necrosis. They create only the granuloma without necrosis. So it is a non-caseating granuloma. Okay, morphologically, if I see non-caseating granuloma as per book, it is sarcoidosis. But practically, even non-caseating granuloma can be seen in tuberculosis. Early stages of tuberculosis, they have non-caseation, then they go for caseation. If you take a biopsy during the period of non-caseation, as a pathologist, I see only non-caseating granuloma. Okay, so in that case, I report it as non-caseating granulomatous inflammation of the lung. So rule out tuberculosis. Understand? Because otherwise blame will fall on me. I have to tell the rule out tuberculosis. Then I will advise them to go for all the investigation we do for tuberculosis. That inshallah will be seen in the next lecture. Okay. So then we will exclude 100% there is no tuberculosis. Then we come to a conclusion of sarcoidosis. Remember, sarcoidosis is not a lung disease. It is a systemic disease. Okay. So just with this explanation, we will go to the handout. I can finish in 10 minutes because we already discussed now.